Hi, welcome to my show tonight. My name is Tom Russell. I'm your host for Life Without Limits, and I have been self-reflective. I guess you could say this. I was on a walk this afternoon, and I was walking with my wife, and I saw this tree that was on the side there, and just a flash came through my mind was when I was a kid. I was climbing up a tree because I climbed trees when I was a kid a lot. And I remember one day I reached for a dead limb and it broke, and I fell 30 feet to the ground, and I was slamming into tree limbs and bark brushes and everything until I got to the very last limb. It was a big limb, and I hit my stomach on there, and I rolled off that, and I landed on the ground. And I was thinking, if something happened to me back then, my life would have changed. I could have died, obviously, but my life would have changed. And I remember walking. I was going to walk across the street, and I had the walk sign on, the light was on, and a car coming the other way, the other way, just sped right through the red light. And just as I was stepping off, I looked at it, and and all it would take that one extra step, and I wouldn't be here. And the other instance I was thinking about is when I was a big bike rider and a long distance bike rider. I remember going on a curve, reaching for my water bottle, and within probably less than a foot, I looked up and there was a parked truck, and I slammed in the parked truck going 20 miles an hour, and I slammed my face in the back of the parked truck. And all those things that happened in my life, I started thinking, man, every those three things in my life could have ended my life, and I wouldn't have thought uh, of anything else but that. And that's what I started thinking about today about this show is because, and we're going to be talking about self-sabotage. And I'm thinking if I had kept self-sabotaging myself in those three instances, um, my life would have been totally different. And I'm bringing back Dr. Laura Cobb on my show. And if you remember from last December, we talked about her poignant life, and she talked about her vulnerable side, a lot of things that happen in life. But we're going to talk about self-sabotage today. And before we bring Laura on, I want to talk about why it's important to me. It's because I remember when I was going through uh, middle school, and I was starting to get into writing. I was in the newspaper and everything, and people were praising me and said I was a really good writer and everything. But I never believed it. I thought I had talent, but I just never believed it. And when I went to high school, it was the same thing. People lauded me, and I professed that I was going to be a writer for the sports writer for the Sports Illustrated. And that's what I really wanted to do in my mind. But when I actually got to the round to thinking about doing it, I knew I wasn't going to do it. But I wanted to let other people do this. And I went to college thinking the same thing, journalism. And I went there 1 year, and I just self-sabotaged myself because I knew in my mind that I was not going to finish college. And to this day, I regret that because I didn't finish it. I gave up on myself. Uh, but when I was 23, things changed for me somewhat. I became an editor for a national magazine for Arbitrade Digest. And man, I thought I made it in my mind. And I professed to everyone else, that I'm going to be able to accomplish something that I really want to do. But for 6 years, I felt like I was living in imposter syndrome. And that's what Lauren and I talked about on our last show is on the outside, people looking at you, you feel like you're in the top echelon of a writing career, and it looks like this. But going in every day, I just didn't feel that because I just didn't feel like I deserved it.
Mm.
Um, and um, and then after that gig was over, after 6 years, I gave up on my dream because I lost doubt. I followed the path of least resistance by becoming a restaurant manager in different management positions. But that's not what I really wanted to do. And so it was just like this over and over and over again. I got so tired of doing this. Um, but everything changed when I wrote my first book when I was 52. And everyone's heard this. I know that. I just follow me with this. Because all these things that happened in my life, I kept beating myself up. And when I wrote the first book, that is when it ended. Because I felt that my life was going to change for the better because I wanted to finish what I started. And I wanted to do it because it was for me and not trying to impress anybody else. It was a feeling that I was going to do something that was going to push me over the edge and say, I'm going to get myself uncomfortable. I'm going to do this. But I'm going to be honest with you. You know, there's so many great things. I've written a couple books, working on my third. I speak in schools and churches and organizations. I'm doing this radio show for goodness sake. It's all because I want to go to the next level, but there is that level of self-doubt, folks. It's there, but it doesn't mean that I'm going to stop doing what I'm going to do because I'm not going to go back. I refuse to go back. And so this is what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be talking about self-sabotage with Laura because she's gone through it in her entire life, but she's turned her life around. So Laura, that's how I wanted to start my show. Thank you so much for coming on my show.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, that's pretty profound. I love it sounded like when you wrote your book, you stepped into your purpose.
Yeah, I did.
That's what struck me is that it's a self-fulfilling prophecy that you deemed it to be true, and so you became it. Mm-hmm. And you always knew it was there.
Yeah.
And I can relate to that very much so. Although there are many, many times where I still feel like an imposter, and it's not necessarily that I don't deserve it because of my hard work. It's that so many things that I did to negate the fact that I deserve it. So then I don't deserve it because of what I've done. Those are the things. And then I do deserve it because of what I've done. And that's the thing about human doings. We're human beings. So when it comes down to it, do I self-sabotage because of my inherent lack of self-worth? Or is it my projecting that I'm not worthy enough? There's a quote by Charles Horton Cooley. It's a sociologist from the early 1900s, and it's called The Looking Glass Self. And it reads as, I am not what I think I am. I am not what you think I am. Mm-hmm. I am what I think you think I am. I am not what I think I am. Mm-hmm. I am not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. So regardless of what you think of me, it's my perception of what I think you think of me. Mm-hmm. And then internalizing that, do I then carry my life out in that manner? And then am I sabotaging myself? This whole world is awful. You're awful, or the situation is, or I'm awful, you're awful, and the situation is awful. That's mm-hmm. not helpful. That's so not helpful. So how long do I want to sit in that?
Not too long. Not too long.
We do. Yeah. And that's the scary thing about it. How long does it take for us to get out of that muck? How long do I can marinate in the idea of it, then I live it out. And that's a scary place to be. I don't want to be there.
So let's go back to briefly. I want to talk about the last show that you were on. We talked about a lot of things, but the crux of what we talked about was, you know, you went through the imposter syndrome because you went to school for 12 years. And you accomplished a great deal. You became, you got your bachelor's, you got a couple masters, right? Mm-hmm. A couple master's degrees, but you went for 12 years and you still weren't satisfied. Then you went through some addictions, and I'm not going to go over everything, but basically you were just battling yourself over and over again, mm-hmm. Trying to find your self-worth, even though from the outside it looks like all the accomplishments that you made got you so many plaudits and everything like this, but it just didn't gratify you. So right. that was basically the idea of the show. And it was, if anybody wants to listen to it, go to Laura Cobb. I think it was the late December of 2020. So I don't remember the exact date, but if you go to iHeartRadio, you can check it out. So let's get into the self-sabotage thing. What is your actual definition of self-sabotage?
Hijacking ourselves into failure. And I don't mean failure. Actually, that's not an appropriate term, because I would rather fail forward. than fall backwards. Because if I fail forward, at least I know where I'm going to land. I know where I'm going to hit. And I love Rocky. He's my hero growing up. And Rocky, and I'm not going to quote this verbatim, it's not about how hard you get hit and fall down. It's about how hard you get hit, fall down, and keep getting up. And so I guess self-sabotage is, how long do I want to keep perpetuating the behavior that's not serving me well? For lack of a better, there is no better. See, that's the thing. I can compare myself into my coffin, because comparison is the bane of joy. Because there's always going to be someone better, and even when I don't think that I'm doing better than me, there is no better. It just is. So with this moment, I would say that whatever doesn't serve me well, in order for me to be the best person that I can be in that moment. And what you said about being in college for 12 years, that's what I did. And I thought that there's imposter syndromes, and for me, there's achiever's curse as well. Because for me, achiever's curse is, can I earn another degree, another diploma, another scholarship, whatever it is, promotion, raise. And there's a fleetingness in that. It satiates a particular want, a drive, a desire. That's not a need. Now, I often say that I'm an external validation junkie. It doesn't matter what form it takes. I've done a lot of intro work that I tried to look out myself in order to gather my sense of self-worth. And that's not even, just even saying that, it's not even rational. How can I gather a sense of self when I'm looking externally? So in order for me to gain some sense of me, I had to stop doing and sit with me. And that was so scary. Today I hear crickets. It's okay, because I don't hear the voices. Although I don't hear voices, I mean, in schizophrenia, which is a serious mental disorder. Although I do have experiences where I call her Anna, she's my drudge, and she'll be in the corner. I'll like, for example, with this interview, I entertain the fact that she's going to show up. It's highly likely that she'll show up. Now, I know that. And when she does, if she does, I already know it's coming. I already know she's going to visit. So I'll entertain, okay, I knew you were coming. Thanks for visiting. I appreciate you coming. I knew you wanted to show up for me again. I appreciate the support. There's a seat over there. And we'll talk later. And I don't mean I'm seeing visions. It's just that it's that internal feeling of I'm not enough. And I don't mean good enough, smart enough, pretty, whatever. And I was my own worst bully, which is the scariest thing about it, because if I'm my own worst bully, and I had a lot, and I became a bully big time in order to compensate for that lack of power that I felt growing up, and even as an adult, that if I'm the bully, I'm bullying myself. And it's just this vicious cycle. It's like a demon almost. That's how it felt. And still does sometimes to this day.
Yeah, that's kind of definition of a bully is, they're going through more issues than other people can understand. Now over the course of your life, though, every time you failed to accomplish, something, did you attribute it to the circumstances that were beyond your control, or something you could control yourself?
No, there's 3 ways that we can self-sabotage. Well, there's 3 ways that we can have our saboteurs. They're like the gremlins, I call them. Remember the gremlins, like the Mowgli or something, the cute little fuzzy thing.
Mogwai,
yeah, and then they get water on them, and then they multiply, and then there's a light or something like that, and then no, it was, for me, it would never, I go on to say never ever, but rarely, if I can ever recall that the circumstances, and rarely was it, I would say it was more frequent, but more 99% of the time it's me. Sometimes it's other people. Rarely does it happen. And I cannot recall a single situation where, not that it hasn't happened, where I'm judged the circumstances. Now, the world's not out to get me, and other people aren't out to get me, because their lives are too busy. I mean, once I realized that the world doesn't revolve around me, I realized that they're probably sabotaging themselves. That's not my deal. I do it for myself. And that's the thing, is to get out of it. It's like, I mean, and the scary thing about it is that it's kind of like when you're growing up, mom says, well, pick yourself up by your britches or your big girl panties, and I have all the control. Well, that's really scary, because if I have all the power and control, and I choose not to get out of it, then there is the shame that is involved with whatever I'm sabotaging myself over.
Now, when you fail over and over again, even though you said you always seek to fail forward, why do people just give up? Because the failure is more of a barrier to them than actual trying to accomplish something.
I think it's easier. I think people, including myself, become complacent in what's familiar. And there's a lot to be said for someone who can make a change. And essentially, that's the only thing we can count on is change. I'm not religious, however, scripture does say this too shall pass. It doesn't say this too shall remain the same. Mm-hmm. So for me, it became very, and I was reflecting on this yesterday. I was out for a walk and I was recalling on my behavior, my past behavior, when I desired so much to be by myself because I could engage in my addictions. And it felt so scary even just to reflect on that feeling. I remember feeling those feelings when I was in it and I couldn't change my behavior. At the moment, I didn't know how. And I just kept repeating on and over and over and over, daily, hourly, the same behavior. And I mean, this can be with money, drugs, sex, food, internet. It doesn't matter what it is, whatever one's addiction is, and might not call it addiction, whatever it is that they're have a compulsion with. And I've been there so easily. I'll put myself in that camp big time. That even visiting it now, even just thinking about it now, is so foreign. It's just it's not nauseating. It's just like a dread. I never ever want to go back there. And it takes work. It takes a lot of work to say, and I couldn't do it myself. I needed a lot of external help to say this is how it can be done. And realizing that I'm the one, when the realization of having power is empowering, that most likely there are 7 billion, how many, 990 or 900,000 other people in this world. And the circumstances aren't just about me. And more likely than not, whomever's listening to this broadcast right now is likely hadn't thought about me in a second before this moment. So they're not out to get me. Mm-hmm. So who else is left? Me. And it's the easiest thing to blame me, because then I'll get caught in that self-fulfilling prophecy, that perpetuation of behavior. When you do what you did, you get what you got.
Now, I'm sure, because you went through a couple of interventions, you know, and the one thing that I personally don't like to hear is someone telling me what I need to do to change. So when someone advises someone else to not self-sabotage, you know, what's the best way to respond to that?
That is an excellent question. When you mention interventions, I don't like this shit on. Don't shit on me. Yeah. And as a licensed professional counselor, my job, my ethical, my moral code, there's a difference between looking through the rearview mirror, which is looking back, because there's a reason why it's smaller than looking through the windshield. Mm-hmm. And that's, for me, that's the difference between a coach and a counselor. From the way I practice, is that looking into the windshield, there's more to go, there's more to grow. Looking back, well, how is it possible when I look at myself in my life, I could have, should have, would have done that? It's not helpful. Mm-hmm. And for someone else to say what you should do is, okay, are you me? No. Now there are certain circumstances, or what I would have done is, what you ought to do. Those are still shoulds in different clothing. At the same time, when it got to a point where I didn't have any other option, because the first time, if you don't do this now, you're going to be out on the street. Okay, I got to do it. And I didn't want it, so it didn't take. The second time it happened, I wanted it. I just didn't know how. And it wasn't coming from a position of ultimatum. It was a family intervention. We love you. We care about you. You're going to die. And I already knew I wanted help. This time was for eating disorder. I knew I was going to die, and I didn't want to. So I wouldn't say I embraced it to the extent that I could. I didn't fight it. I didn't fight the first one because I didn't have any other choice, because I didn't have anywhere else to go. I resisted inside, but not in a demonstrative way. The second time I leaned into it and accepted it. And it was the best decision I'd ever made in my life. It was life-changing. Brene Brown was a big part of it. Not that I wish I knew her, but I already know her. She knows me. Her words spoke to me. She saved my life. And there's 3 months of joy and despair and acceptance of, I can't do this to myself anymore. And I don't like the situation, but the situation is not out to get me. And so accepting and honoring, I think about, when you think about, if you ever feel judged in your life, when someone else says, it consistently, and they're just almost toxic. You can feel the venom almost. And I just, now I look at it and think, gosh, I was there, because I didn't necessarily do it about other people. I was the quickest judge to me. And then I look at the person and I feel with compassion and empathy that they're going through a lot of stuff. Because I want to judge. I'm like, what do you don't get away from me. Who are you to? And I think, wow. And not pity, just empathy. I really know what that's like. I don't mind not like what they're saying to me, but it's not about me. Whatever they're saying to me or about me is so not about me. So when you say about self-sabotage, doing that for myself, and like my I beg your pardon, my little guy, he's special needs, so he wants some love too.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Instead of judging others, I will judge myself if I ever judge others.
Yeah, because I know that when you went to California, you weighed like something like 87 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had you, and I've had a couple other people who are anorexic. They don't see it, until someone. Well, you have to come to the realization that you need to make the change. Because anybody telling you that you need to eat, you look real thin, all that sort of stuff, that doesn't work, because you know that. So,
Yeah.
but when you get in that situation, how do you notice that you're self-sabotaging?
Well, for me, I knew it. I saw it in the mirror. I knew I wasn't fat. And I looked like I was in a concentration camp. And I had no fat. And I was cold all the time, and I just couldn't stop. And people would say to me the same thing. Well, just stop moving, because I was always busy, always doing. There's no way I could be sitting like for right now for more than 10 minutes ever. um, I think at a certain point, there's a slight difference with eating disorders versus other chemical dependencies, is that you have to have a relationship with food. You can disarm yourself from drugs and alcohol, but food is a drug. Alcohol is a drug. And that's like saying you're addicted to breath. You have to have a relationship with it. So I'm not an expert on eating disorders per se from a clinical perspective. I can only speak to my experience, and I certainly would never, ever give any type of medical diagnosis or medical prescription or guidance. I only know what worked for me is that I just did not feel okay in me anymore. And I couldn't do it for my son. I couldn't do it for anyone else. I don't even know if I did it for me. I just didn't want to feel that way anymore.
Well, it's not like a light switch, though, right? I mean, because you can't say, okay, today I'm going to change, because you've had that chronic over daily thing that you have to live it every single day. How do you go that extra step and not fall back?
Well, for me, I just had to be engrossed in it. I had to go away for 3 months in an enclosed environment. And for me, I had to go to a very small, and I'm grateful for my family that they found this rehab. It was an alcohol and drug and eating disorder combined. Now, gratefully, I was sober by that time, for 2.5 years, and a year and a half, yeah. Um, and so I don't want to say that I didn't have to deal with it. They were still combined. It's just I had to go away to someplace that had significant emphasis on very one-on-one monitoring. I mean, and some people don't have this good fortune. I was very blessed that I had a team, and I had a nutritionist, and I was very, very grateful for it. I cannot even tell you. I don't know how people do it. When people tell me that they don't go to AA or they don't ever have a program, I really cannot speak to that, because I don't have any idea how. And they'd say, "Oh, you can think your way out of it." I couldn't. Disorders and addiction are a brain disorder. They're a dysfunction, and there's something. It can be chemically goes amok in the brain. So in order for you to use my brain, my brain got me to where I was at. And when chemicals are involved, instead of instead of relying on my capabilities, I would numb in any way. It could be using a gaming device. Doesn't matter. It could be spending time with my cat if I'm not dealing with life. So almost being forced to, I technically I could have left. Yeah, I know where to go. But ultimately, after I got well with my eating disorder and my alcoholism, I did end up homeless. So either anyway, I could have left.
Yeah.
So there's what's called a crossover addiction. It doesn't necessarily just have to be, for me, I would say for me it was the external validation and then coping with that lack of sense of self manifested in so many different types of abusive behavior. I'm not sure if that makes sense per se. It makes sense to me. So it wasn't just about eating disorder. It wasn't about drugs or alcohol. Part of, yeah, for sure, part of it. But and that the self-sabotage, it didn't really matter how it took place. 'Cause for me, I was a pleaser. I am a pleaser. And there's so many different types of self-sabotage. Hyperachiever, big time. Restless. Oh my gosh, restless. So much, so relevant. I can be busy but not productive. And so, oh, I'm doing all these things. How is that's not serving me? So, like for today, I don't really sleep much. I slept until 11 o'clock today, which people are like, oh, what's that? I just don't, for me to sleep past 4 a.m., if I
Yeah.
sleep at all,
Yeah.
that's a big deal. And then thinking, and then me judging myself, oh, I didn't get enough done today. I feel like I'm slacking off. Well, that's my saboteur coming in saying,
Right.
you need to go back to being hyper tasker, restless, in order to get things done. And then I've done the program long enough so that, wait a second, that's my judge coming in. That's my saboteur.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a daily thing.
Yeah, because you sent me an assessment test, and I went through that thing, and I answered the questions. I think there's like 50 questions, right?
Something like that. And it's a very
Yeah.
quick test. It's like 90 seconds or like
Yeah.
first got answer.
Yeah. It doesn't take that long. And then I saw the results, and I was thinking that one of the biggest things that I think a lot of people don't want to read is the truth. And they have to look at that. You know, you always think, well, they don't know me. These people don't, who do these assessment tests don't really know me. But that's not true because I looked at that thing and says, wait a minute, that's me. That's me. That's me. And I felt like, so where do I go from here? Do I accept it? And what do I need to do to change? Because
Right.
if those characteristics that you're seeing, that you're looking at, are not making you a better person, you need to try to say, be self-reflective and say, I got to change. There's just
So,
there's no way to do this. Now, I got a question for you. This is what really gets me about. I'm a generally a positive person,
mhm.
okay, but you always hear people say, um, uh, change a negative thought into a positive thought. But if you don't believe it, um, it's really not productive because you feel like I can say positive, I'm telling you it's positive, but in my mind, in my heart, I'm not feeling it. So how do you change that?
Right. Sometimes you just keep showing up. There are well, and to build on what you mentioned is that everybody's got a judge. And there are 9 different ways that we self-sabotage, and it's not relevant for everyone. I'm not a victim. I'm not a stickler. Some people it shows up for that way. And whatever your score was, it's not an absolute score. The numbers don't necessarily mean that much as opposed to their relevancy to one another. So, for example, if there's a score of 10, hypothetically, just in general, and you have like 3 sevens, then they work in conjunction with, they're accomplices, and they all work with the judge.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you have 1 or 2 that's really high, and then the rest of them are really low in number, and that's the thing about these objective tests is that they don't really know me. Exactly the point. You don't want them to know you because then they'll get tied up in this subjectivity.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this, and sometimes you do this, and sometimes you don't. I don't want that. I just want you to answer from your gut on a general day. That's the best way, the most reliable way to assess your behavior is it within any given circumstance. In addition to that, there's it's positive intelligence is that how well and to what extent do you live life on a range of positivity versus negativity. And that's like we talk about EQ, people, that's the buzzword right now, emotional intelligence. And we talk about IQ, intelligence quotient. What's your PQ? To what extent are you able to infiltrate the saboteur when it comes involved and to say, no, it's not going to happen. That's the thing about it, is that you inject, and it's hard. You didn't go into the gym each day and just automatically be able to lift 100 pounds over your head. It takes time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like your mental fitness muscles. My brain needs a lot of work. This brain it's an organ and it's fat. And in order for me to work it, I got to approach it. Everybody's about health and wellness right now. If we didn't have our brain at work, then we can't control our respiratory system, our cardiovascular system, anything, a digestion, anything is based in the brain. And so if we start thinking about things, I think this and I'm going to rationalize, that's not helpful, because I can think myself out of anything.
Mm-hmm.
So then changing the negative to a positive, it's not that easy. I'll give you a quick example. If you could take 10 seconds, just take your index finger and your thumb and brush the two just gently, so gently that you can barely feel your fingertip ridges touch one another and caress.
Okay.
And just do that for 10 seconds mindfully. Just focus on the sensation of your fingertips. 10 seconds.
Okay, I'm doing it.
If you really focus, there's nothing else you can think about. And so when you're in the line in a grocery store and person's taking too long, and you just do a PQ rep, it's just so easy. It can be, people say, oh, meditation, I'm going to sit for an hour in the morning and get centered and settled. Okay. How are you doing that throughout the day? Oh, it sets me up for the day. Well, what happens at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 9 o'clock in the evening when your spouse is irritating you, or you're allowing your spouse to irritate you because your spouse is not doing it? If your spouse is doing it to you, you have the choice of whether or not you're going to engage in that.
Mm-hmm.
Or your child is getting on your nerves. Okay, your child is getting on your nerves. You're allowing your child to get on your nerves. And I'm not saying that, please don't mistake me with a child. I'm not saying that it's going to be all roses and sunshine. Even so, if you get cut off on the highway, and let's say someone just cuts you off, what's the matter with you? Can't you see me? That's not helpful. They can't hear you. Instead, I'm not being Pollyannish or saccharine about this, is that I hope that person's well. Like, are they considering? No, they weren't even thinking of me. Were you thinking of them before they passed you?
Mm-mm.
Probably not.
Yeah.
So what would make you think that you're so special that they're going to be thinking about you? They're thinking about themselves. Fine, let them. Well, they're not thinking about me. Well, who's got the problem there?
Well, you're not going to be able to change anything. I mean,
exactly.
You could.
There's one thing you can change.
Yeah.
There's one thing you can change.
The way you respond to it. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's a respond, a react. I just react. I'm volatile. Okay, are you owning that label for yourself? Because you don't have to behave that way. Well, it's in my genetic makeup. No, it's not. It's how our brains are programmed. Mm-hmm. We're not with saber-toothed tigers right now, looking all like, someone's out to get me. But that served us well back in the day because you didn't want to get eaten. Yeah. Today, you're not worried about getting eaten. You're worried about being taken advantage of. That still can feel like, oh, they're going for my jugular. Mm-hmm. It's not really what's happening. It can feel that way for sure, because there's only two responses. If you think about it, let's say, this never happened. Let's say you're in the middle of sleeping and there's noise in your home, and you realize that there's a possibility that you're getting robbed. Okay, that fear, that anxiety. Okay, that sensation is the exact same as for those who have fear of flying or fear of public speaking. That sensation is exactly the same. It's the label that we put on the situation, because there still is a possibility of threat to life. Probably not going to die if you're public speaking. You probably might not die if you fly. Mm-hmm. You might not. Hopefully, you won't die if there's a brewer. The sensation and the energy and the anxiety is still the same. So if you can expect that, not saying to live your life that way, if you know you're going into an event or if you're experiencing that event that just happens, that acute event, that possibly pivotal moment, if you can practice that throughout the day, not just your 60 minutes. I'm not saying to do this and meditate. I'm saying to be centered and grounded. When whatever life throws at you at any moment in time, you can always come back to, I'm okay. Just coming back to the body. Where do you feel it in the body? And that's hard because you ever get that gut in the pit of your stomach where it just doesn't feel right? You could be either nauseous or nervous. There's like a load right there. That's the label that we put on it.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
So mentioning the positivity, you can determine, you can find out. I mean, I'm not all about like hardcore on the assessments. They do a pretty good job. There's to find out like to what extent are you like saying that the world sucks, or I mean, are you going to go is your way to like go there? We don't even know we're doing it, because I'll judge myself and like, whoa, don't get down on yourself, Laura. People will say to me, what do you mean? Well, couldn't it have been somebody else's fault? No, it's all me. And then I get in my depressed mode, and then that's not helpful. I give myself maybe 3 minutes now. I used to be 3 hours or 3 days. Mm-hmm. And I'm not extraordinary. It's just implementing this, like I mentioned, the meditation for 60 minutes in the morning. That's great. That carries you through. If nothing happens during the day, it's probably likely that life is active and something's going to happen. So then prepare yourself, go into your mental fitness gym, so to speak.
Now, one of the things we talk about self-sabotaging is procrastination. And I'm going to be honest with you, I do that daily. I think a lot of people do. But how do you defeat that?
That's a great question. I can relate to that in that I want it to be perfect. So I can only use myself as an example, and I procrastinate too as well. However, my excuse is that, well, I'll be busy doing other things. So instead of doing the one thing that I need to do, that would be most helpful for me to finish the thing that I don't want to do, just to get it done, I'll make myself busy with other items or tasks. And I think, well, I'm doing this. Well, the other thing's still got to get done.
Yeah, it's in the back of your head too.
Right.
You're doing it, but you know you have to get the biggest thing you want to get done.
Right.
So what do you do then? I mean, because you have to somehow make that decision. Let me do the thing that needs the biggest priority.
Well, that's so true. The first thing about it is awareness, and a lot of people don't know they are not aware of it. So, for example, in order for us to realize, for me to realize what purpose does that serve for me to procrastinate? Well, I don't enjoy doing that activity. It's still got to get done. How helpful? This is daily. I'm so glad you asked this question, because it is daily. I have all these little Post-its and stuff. I got to do this, and it's daily. Like, okay, I got to get these questions to you. I got to call such and such. I don't want to do that because I don't like the person I have to call. It's got to get done anyway. And then what's the benefit cost ratio? How helpful is it for me to sit there and like, you still got to do it, still got to get it done. So then essentially, what powers do I have within me to call upon? It's like a sage, like a Jedi, like with the lightsaber with Luke Skywalker, Yoda. What would Yoda do? And you empathize, okay, with that innocent self. Is like, you probably didn't want to do the stuff that you didn't want to do all the time, and now you know better. So when you know better, you can do better. Okay, I'm sensing that I'm procrastinating. So, this is interesting. Kind of lean in. How can I innovate and make the approach a little bit different, so that I don't have to I'm going to get the task done, but it's going to be different? How can I activate? Okay, I'm aware that I'm procrastinating, and awareness, that's activation. So your feelers go off. The fact that you're aware of it, then you're hijacking your own hijacker. Those who come in and say, "No, I'm not doing this because it's not going to serve you well." Actually, it's going to serve me well to do the thing I don't want to do, to lean into it. There's a curiosity, there's activating, there's navigating. Okay, let's see how this is going to work out. I don't want to do this thing. Let me navigate this task. Even if it's just one task, there's a series of tasks that need to take place in pursuing completion of that task. It's not just one task. For example, let's say, okay, I'm going to clean out the garage. Okay, great. There's 3 frogs on a log. 2 decide to jump off. How many are left?
I'm going to say 1, but that's probably not the right answer.
3. They decided to jump off. They didn't do it.
That's right. Yeah.
I'm going to clean the garage. Great. Good to know you're going to do that. And then I want to say, when are you doing it? You tell me you're going to do it. They're not doing it. I'm going to get this done. There are things on my list right now that I'm cringing and not because I'm talking to you. It's like, I didn't get it done. Well, what's more helpful? Okay, I didn't get that done. What's more important? speaking about this, and maybe it'll help somebody, or getting that one email sent out that's not life-changing.
Right.
My judge says, you didn't send out that email. You're nothing. You know, she sits in there. You're nothing. Who do you think you are? You know, you didn't get the stuff done because you're worthless. Well, that's not really true. She just wants to go down to the depths and just tear out my bowels and just ugh. Oh, I mean, do I really? No, I don't feel that way right now. Only because I'm feeling somewhat of supportive of service. That's all. That's it, though. I got to be of service, and then that's it. See, even that there's a delicate line there because I'll be of service to the extent that I'm a pleaser. Oh, let me do this for you, and let me do. Well, great. Well, then how much do I have left to give for me? That's not helpful. I'm wiped out all the time.
Yeah.
Or even worse, as a pleaser, even worse, I'm going to continue to give, and then I get mad or irritated when someone doesn't reciprocate. That's not helpful because my intention was to be supportive and helpful. Well, then I get mad, and they never said they were going to reciprocate, but I'm thinking that they need. See, there's an awareness there.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I don't feel those things. I'm awareness that they're lies. They
Now,
never said.
I'm sorry. There's one thing that really irritates about myself is a lot of people have this paralysis of analysis syndrome. How do you eliminate that behavior?
That's so good. The hyper rational. Well, I can think, oh, well, if I just use logic, and I was so like that so many years ago in grad school, and if I can just think my way out of it, I'm so rational and logical. There's no emotion there. When okay, if I were to say to you the difference between, let me see how I feel about that, as opposed to, let me see how I know about that. Let me see how I think about that. We don't say that. Let me see. That doesn't feel right. We don't say it. That doesn't think right. That doesn't feel right. The body knows. So there's general kind of cliches or sayings that we have in our culture. They allude to. I can hear. I know. I gotta think about that. It doesn't feel right. That doesn't sit right. We don't say that doesn't think right.
Mm-hmm.
So we already know that the body is where it's at. Our brains, it's hardwired to survive. Our bodies are made to thrive. Our mind is the map. Our bodies are the emotion. I'm sorry. Our bodies are our mind is our map. Our bodies are the vehicle, and our emotions are the fuel. But unifying them is one. So we got physical fitness, our body. We got emotional fitness, which is our fuel, and then we got our mental fitness. That's our map. Like we talk about Brené Brown. That's the why. Mental fitness, that's the how. And I don't just mean going to your therapist, your counselor, your coach, or your psychiatrist, or your psychologist. That's part of it. It's a wholeness and it's a wellness. And we can't be perfect all the time. We're never going to be perfect ever. So just get over it. At least I had to really realize that for a long time. That it's a movement towards into becoming, because we're human beings. To become more of ourselves.
There's, we're close on time here. I have so many questions I'm not going to be able to get to, and I apologize for that. Now, a lot of people, when they don't want to self-sabotage themselves, how do you set realistic goals that you can actually achieve?
You take 10 seconds, maybe in the morning, and you get grounded. I can do it right now talking with you. I can feel the earth under my feet. There's a reason why it's called grounding. And there's a reason why we can just focus and listen to our breath. And yes, it's a mindfulness practice. It is a daily practice. I mean, think about, for names that don't need to be mentioned, that the 3-day amazing, just huge event with certain, like, I'm Not Your Sage, people who author books that they're just like huge in the industry. And then, I'm going to do this. I got totally stoked and I'm psyched and I'm excited. And then 3 weeks later, 3-day event, 3 weeks later, where's the momentum? Or you read a book on the 7 habits of highly functioning people. That's great. That's great. Where's the emphasis on retention and integration? So a daily practice, it doesn't have to be a weekend of let's get them, let's go hard and hardcore. It can be a daily practice of an ever lit flame, an ever lit low emblem, instead of a bonfire, because those bonfires are going to go out big time. Then how often do you see that the like hurricanes and earthquakes, they kind of like boom and then they're out. But the consistency, that's the hard part. And it's so hard because I'm not seeing the effects. Did you make a change in 10 seconds? Did you snap out of it? Yeah. It's not going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm like, oh heavens, I know, right? Like, it's not going to be, if you're flying, it doesn't have to be. It's just a subtle shift on a daily basis in a very slight manner.
Now, would you, a lot of people write down their goals, or let's talk about behavior though. Is it ideal to write down your negative behavior, like pros and cons type thing? Your negative behavior, would replace that with positive. So you throw out a negative thing, you then say, no, this is the reason why I need to turn that into positive.
Well, people can write it down and just, I don't want to get too researchy or anything, but the data just show that for every one negative comment, behavior, whatever it is, interaction, there takes about 5 positive ones to negate that. However, even though there's more positive, that negative, because we rely on it, we need it to survive. We have to think negative. And when we're born, not necessarily in today's day and age, but we have to survive to be skeptical. Oh, that berry's poisonous. Don't eat that. It's something so simple, but I mean, you think about it, it's going to save our life. And I wouldn't say, for me at least, I can't speak for everybody. For me, I didn't write it down, except for that assessment. Whew, positiveintelligence.com, take it. That it wasn't necessarily writing it down, because I did so much writing in my life. I'm pretty much done with writing. I'd rather speak under the microphone. That it's more of an awareness. However, what you said before, analysis is paralysis. So true. Because I can get wrapped up in the thinking about it. Well, if I think about it this way and postulate and have this theory about it, that gets nothing done. So maybe for some people, writing it down, that you recognize it when it happens, that's very helpful. For me, it didn't work that way. And that's the thing. I'm not saying it's right. Like, people used to ask me when I was a personal trainer, what's the best exercise to do? The one you'll do. When's the best time to work out? When you'll do it.
Yeah. Now, the one thing I found interesting, because I listened to your show from December, and one of the things you talk about is pain is essential in your life. Can you elaborate on that?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for asking. Pain, I need pain, because otherwise, how am I going to know pleasure? It's a comparison at the same time. There's two emotions, there's fear and there's love. If I did not know what intense joy is, I'd never know what intense anger, or sorrow, I should not say anger. I wouldn't know what is possible to be taken from me. Mm-hmm. If I didn't know what those pivotal moments in my life where I was at what I thought was the deepest moments of despair and sorrow, I would never be able to appreciate how much joy and love I have. Mm-hmm. And it's not an either or. There's not polar opposites. It's a spectrum. You can't just say that it's either this or that, or and either or. It's a continuum. So pain is necessary in order for me to know whether or not it's a barometer of whether or not how long I want to stay there. Mm-hmm. So I mentioned before, if there's a hot stove with a burner that's very warm, and I put my hand on it, we need that because we know that's dangerous.
Yeah, we have one.
If we need our sense, we need our sense of smell and taste in order to protect us from poison. Mm-hmm. So pain is helpful in the fact that it protects us. Emotions are important. However, how long do you want to stay there? That's a determining factor. It's a choice.
Man, like I said, I wish we had more time. These 15 minutes just goes way too fast. Laura, thank you so much for coming on my show again. I didn't know what we were going to talk about a couple months ago, but doggone it, it fell in our lap. So I appreciate you being the one who we talked, having you talked on the show. How do people reach you?
You can go to my website, www.drlaura, that's drlauracobblifecoach.com. That's all one word. I'm on LinkedIn as well. Just look up Dr. Laura, or Laura Cobb, I should say, and I'm the one with the red hair. Yeah. And my email address is lauracobb, one word, 73 @gmail.com. That is awesome. lauracobb73, one word, @gmail.com.
Awesome. I hope people reach out to you because I think you have a lot to say. You always have a lot to say. Anything you'd like to add?
I think you are epic, and I know your listeners are as well, and I look forward to being of service.
Yeah, thank you so much. And as I end all my shows, I want everyone to smile infectiously, laugh genuinely, love unconditionally, live courageously. I believe in all of you, and I want to hopefully everyone have a fantastic week, the best week you have ever experienced in your entire life. And I appreciate all of you. Have a great week.